Hello and welcome back to another episode of 0 to 60. Firstly, a huge thank you to all the Buy Me a Coffee subscribers and members. You guys are making a huge difference to my life right now. There are a lot of things going on in the background that I can't talk about, and the support from Buy Me a Coffee really does make a difference. Thank you all very much. And I need to give a thank you to CarLife-Mall, who I called CarLife-Mail in the last video. Yeah, it was bad. Sorry about that, guys. For sending me this dash cluster. I get offered a lot of products, and so do a lot of other YouTubers, but I don't take a lot of them. But this I was genuinely interested in, and I'm genuinely impressed with it. There are a few issues, and we're going to talk about those issues. We're going to take it for a bit of a drive, and then we're going to address the questions that everybody asked in the previous video. So this is going to be quite a long video with a few parts to it. But I do need to address how hard it is to film. A lot of guys that are familiar with the channel, you know I live by the power of the GoPro, which they're not great cameras, but it's what I work with, the GoPro and an iPhone. And the wide angle lens on the GoPro just picks up so much glare on this screen, it's embarrassing and it doesn't look normal. In fact, let me just show a picture of the GoPro versus the iPhone, and then my eyes can still see less glare than the GoPro. You've got to trust me on this. The glare from this screen is not an issue to the human eye. Full sunlight, the worst thing I can see are my silver paddles. In fact, you can probably see them there. Now, what? Yeah, there. Okay, so you see the silver paddle? That is, see, to my eye, I can't really see my hand, but the GoPro makes my hand look really bright in the reflection. The other thing that's a bit annoying are the silver paddles. However, once you actually drive with this, when you actually drive this screen, after 2 seconds of driving, you do not notice the glare. The glare is not a problem. The screen is very bright. In fact, minimum brightness at nighttime is still quite bright. I like it, but my partner was like, can we turn the screen down a bit more? But no, that's as low as it goes. Yeah, just with all of this review, with everything moving forwards, you've got to trust me that to the human eye, the screen looks fine. The glare is not an issue. Now let's talk about the things that are an issue. Now, I want to highlight that they are not good things, but they should be fixable. CarLife-Mall have told me they're going to fix them, and they said they should have some firmware to me in a few days, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we're just going to boot the screen up. Okay, you can see how fast it turns on, and I'm going to start the screen up. You will notice we have the vehicle inspection display down the bottom. Now that is something you have to set up, which I will show you how to do that once we get back from the drive. And the issue, oh my God, the glare is terrible. I'm gonna switch to the iPhone and try and show it a little bit better. Okay, so we have the iPhone there. That's a bit better. It's not, oh my God. This is the hardest thing. I hate filming screens. Just trust me, it looks really good to the eye. Now you can actually see there with the iPhone that the resolution on the screen is great, and it really is good. I'm very happy with the display. The display, I don't think you can get any better. I don't think there's a better option out there. You spend 10 grand on a screen, it's not gonna look any better than this. But the problem, so, first thing you may have noticed, which I keep drawing my eyes to, is value from startup. That should be value from startup, which is still not really the right English. I've actually sent a list of all of the English errors that are in this firmware version, and they've said they're going to fix it. The one thing that really does do my head in about this display, and it's only this cluster, but then again, I don't really like the other displays, which we will get to once we've been for the drive. The RPM gauge on the right doesn't show the same, or doesn't display the same as the one on the left. The one on the left has a bigger outer glow. So when you rev it, at a glance, it kind of looks like the RPM on the left is higher than the RPM on the right. If we try and hold it at 1,000 RPMs, yeah, you can see it just looks like it's doing more revs on this side. It is just the outer glow, but it is something else that they've said they're gonna fix, hopefully within the next few days. That's the most annoying thing about the screen. What more can I say? Now, I've been using the screen in this mode, fuel information. Now, the reason for that is we have liters per kilometer, which should say consumption. I've asked them to correct that. We get my pointy finger in there. It displays water temp, oil temp, distance to empty, and then voltage. Now, on this car, which has had a few alternator issues, it's so nice having the voltage display there. I know the alternator is doing what it should be doing. And you may also notice that my water temp and oil temp is the same value. Now, that has come about because this car's BSD sensor, or oil level sensor, is faulty. It doesn't display any errors, but it's basically just mimicking the water temp with the oil temperature. And then I've just got basic trip information on this journey, from this journey here. Now that is how I've ended up driving with the screen pretty much every day. I really like it. It is better than the analog gauges. It's giving me more information than the analog gauges, and it is easier to drive with. Now I'm going to switch back to the GoPro. We're going to struggle and I'll see if I can take you for a drive. Now, again, ignore the glare, but try and pay attention to how fast the screen reacts. Okay, so I've got the GoPro on a chest mount, just to try and get you guys to see the screen, and we're gonna go for a drive. Although, there is a Lamborghini here. He has a screen like this. Okay, right. So you can see the gear position sensor, it reacts immediately to the input with the shifter. So there's no delay there. And pay attention to the speed. Okay. So speed delay is immediate, and we're going to touch on the RPM reactions later. It's pretty impossible to show you guys with a 320D how fast it reacts, but you will see shortly. In fact, I'm going to shut up and you can just listen to the engine. Okay, so I'm just going to accelerate away from this junction so you can actually watch the car go through RPMs and you can see how the tacho reacts. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. It's very hard to tell you with a diesel, but trust me, the way that the tacho reacts is spot on. Okay, we're back after the drive, and hopefully it gave you guys an idea of how this cluster responds to what the RPM of the actual engine is doing. I just want to say quickly, there was a gentleman in the previous video's comment section that's put one of these clusters into an E90 M5. Now, they have the S85 V10. They're a high revving thing. I think they rev to 8,250 RPMs, and he has no issues with how this cluster reacts to his engine. He's not missing gears, he's not over revving it. However, they are picking up the RPM signal. They've done a good job. It works really, really well. Now, let me just show you guys how I've been using this cluster and why I like it so much. So the cluster, in fact, all of the different gauge faces for this CarLife-Mall cluster, they have 3 sections to them. So this middle section is what I'm going to call, well, it's just speed and RPM and gear display. So it's like live data that you use on every single cluster face. Then you need to see this information. This right-hand side screen, you can actually run a few different options through that right-hand side screen, and then the left-hand side is the same sort of setup. You can change this information. Now, the way that I've got it set up, on the right-hand side, I'm displaying value from startup. Come on, oh, they're going to fix it soon, but it should be value from startup. In fact, really, it should be like journey information. So it displays how long the journey is, how much time I've spent on the journey, the average fuel for the journey, and the average speed. Now, that's probably not overly interesting, but if you're hypermiling a diesel like I am lately, I kind of like this information. It's good to know how well I'm driving the vehicle. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, in fact, I might be able to zoom in a bit. Yes. On the left-hand side of the screen, I'm displaying fuel information, which is really just, well, it's liters per 100, and that is live and accurate when you're actually rolling. I've got water temp and oil temp. Now, this cluster seems to pick up the oil temp and then it's basing it off the water temp. I think that is because this vehicle actually has an issue with the BSD bus. When you scan it with ISTA, there is an issue with this vehicle's oil sensor. So I assume it's just duplicating, but it has got the ability to display the oil temperature that is being transmitted on the CAN bus. It picks it up, and it also picks up water temperature, although mine are the same. It's good to look at because this car also had a thermostat problem when we first got it. We've got distance to empty, 339 kilometers, and then we have voltage at 13.9 volts and a live voltage display. So for me, daily driving this vehicle, that's given me a chance to actually keep an eye on some crucial information that I'm actually interested in, and that is how I've left it. I have no interest in, if I do that, looking at a car. So that is basically, oh, let me just get it to focus. So that is basically what I really like about this screen, being able to have 3 lots of information on the display, and it's information that I seem to be using, especially this stuff over here lately. Now, I would really like it if it had things from MHD, like boost and all that sort of stuff, and it's definitely got the hardware in it to pick up MHD information and display it on this screen, but it's going to be a matter of demand, how many people want that feature, how many people buy these clusters as to whether they build it in. It may also require something from MHD to transmit different data over the CAN bus. It's possible, but for now, all you get to see is the cluster, the information that is within a standard cluster, but you can just see more of it at once, which is what I really like. I feel like I'm driving a newer car with this cluster. I like driving this car. Some of you probably won't believe it, but I have a girlfriend, and she was actually excited to drive the car when it had the cluster. You fit 1,000 horsepower turbo to a car, not excited, but you put a digital cluster in from China and she really wants to drive the car all of a sudden. It's kind of weird, but it makes it feel like a newer car. I really do like it. I really, really do. Okay, now let me just go through the other gauge types quickly. We go to them system settings, and then you go theme. You got to hold the BC button down, select the theme. We'll go to, actually we'll start at the top. Sorry, we're gonna go simple first off. So that is basically the G series non-M's cluster, and I just kind of don't like it. You do end up with the same 3 points of information. You're gonna have your trip info or fuel information here, then the center screen becomes a display, and then you've got your speed over here. I just don't like it. It looks a bit weird. I don't like that 2.6 RPM thing, but it's there. Some people might like it, just not my thing. I've tried to use it and I just get away from it pretty quickly. The comfort display, I like a little bit more, but again, I still don't like how it displays the RPMs. It's just not my thing. I have spoken to CarLife-Mall about fixing the font type on the times 1000 RPM. The trip meter is Times New Roman, the odometer is the right font, and then kilometer per hour also needs a little bit of an update. Again, they're going to get onto it, and this will look a little bit more uniform, a little bit more like a genuine cluster, but it's just not my thing. Again, the technology cluster, I just don't like it. I cannot drive the car with this on the display, but somebody might like it. It all functions like the other ones, just not my thing. But this screen here, I just love it. I cannot get enough of it. Why is this phone on? Okay, I cannot get enough of it. I really, really do like it. Now, I'm going to switch back over to the GoPro because even this iPhone is struggling to film this screen. It's so painful. And I'm going to go through a few questions from the other video. I think we've got about 15 different questions that people wanted me to answer. So let me get the list up. Okay, so the first question that, well, it was probably the most common question is, can we display MHD data on the gauge? You cannot, not currently. The hardware is there to do it. It would just need some software tweaking to basically get this cluster to pick up MHD CAN bus information, or CAN bus information that MHD picks up. It may require some work from MHD's programming side. Austin, who is one of the programmers for MHD, he also owns an Nexus Motorsport. He is a 060G member, or he's in the G chat, and he can get MHD to do some cool things. In fact, I've got some very cool things coming to the M54 MHD world. It's possible, we just can't do it yet. I'm gonna push for it. I'm gonna keep talking to CarLife-Mall, I'll keep talking to Austin at MHD, and we'll try and get boost on the cluster. We just can't do it yet. What else we got? Tacho response, hopefully I addressed that earlier. I wanted to show that there is no delay with the way that the tacho responds on the cluster to how the engine is responding. As for warning displays, now the warnings all pop up down in this bottom section here. Believe it or not, since I've had the cluster and I haven't actually had many faults with the car, but it seems to pick up pretty much everything. Somebody did ask if they've coded out warnings on their factory cluster. Does that mean that this one won't display it? As far as I'm aware, the warnings actually come from the CCC unit or the CIC unit. That sends a warning signal to the cluster, and then the cluster displays the warning. Now you can get the clusters to ignore the warnings, or you can get the CCC to ignore the warning. So you may be able to code out errors still with this cluster, but currently it just relays warnings. Everything that I'm aware of that can come up does come up. And in fact, I've only seen a warning for overspeed when I had the speed limiter set too low. There's been a warning for door open while driving. In fact, let me see if I can bring that up. Because if I open the door a crack and then we drive, we got the beep. There it is. Okay. It's only if you're going a certain speed. Now, I think they've got it set. You've got to be over, it might be 8 kilometers an hour. But if you go over 8 kilometers an hour, it gives you a full door warning. All of the normal engine warnings are displayed differently. I can't, is there a way I can get it to display an error? Vehicle inspection. Yeah, no, it's got the OBD. Trust me, the errors display fine. You get the normal bong. The bong comes from the CCC or the CIC unit, so the warnings still sound the same. Yes, so the warnings still sound the same, unlike the indicators, which do now make a different tick noise. I don't know if I like it or not. Okay, the next thing, JB4 gauges. Now, if you have a JB4, it has the ability to take over your dash cluster. Now, It should work. The reason I had to think about that is when it does boost and all that sort of stuff. When JB4 is displaying boost, it takes over your temperature gauge. Now this one still has the temperature gauge, but it should still work. All the JB4 does is intercept the signal from the sensor and the DME, or the DME and the cluster, and then it basically sends the data to the cluster that the DME would normally send. I hope that makes sense. But if the JB4 wants to display 4000 on the tacho, it will do it. And if it wants to display a certain speed, this should do it as well. The only thing I'm not 100% sure on is how you set up JB4 for different speedos, because if you've got a mile/hour speedo, you put a different setting in the JB4. Although I assume you're just going to have to link it. So this car is running kilometers, and you would just display the JB4 information set to a kilometer speedo output. I hope that makes sense, but it should work. I cannot think of a reason why it won't, although I haven't tested it. But yeah, go ahead. I don't think it's going to be a problem. M mode display for M3 and M5s. Now, the gentleman that was in the comment section talking about his S85 E60 M5, his cluster, one of these clusters, no longer displays the SMG shift mode. On true M cars with SMGs, you get a shift mode, and it's seven different modes for the transmission. These clusters will not display an E-Series shift mode yet. I've actually added that to the CarLife-Mall request to see if it's something they can add in. When you're playing with factory clusters, there is an M Sport configuration that you code in with NCS Expert, and that's how you get it to display shift modes. So it's pretty rare. The data is on the bus that this thing is connected to. They've just got to make sure that it will accept that data. It may require a little bit more work. I don't think it's something they're going to do anytime soon. We need to check if the odometer displays in miles. I better check that. Okay, so inside factory sub menu 0169, which is when you put the code 0169, you have an option to set your trip unit to imperial or metric, and you can see there everything is miles per gallon, miles per hour, and the car has 211 miles to empty. Yeah, so it switches the whole cluster over to imperial, but we're going to change it back to metric. There we go. So yes, it will display miles. I forgot. In regards to this cluster displaying vehicle information, if I go just to here, we got that basically the OBD light comes and goes. High beam lights. So if I switch on my high beam, I better turn the headlights on first, that'll help. So you can see we have headlights on displayed at the top there. If I go to high beam, that one tells me on high beam, and this car does have auto high beam, which I've got to be driving, but it even has a logo and it displays an automatic or a, yeah, it is, it's the auto, it says A next to the high beam symbol, where it'll flick between high and low beam on its own. That all displays absolutely fine. It gets a display up in this area here for cruise control, and according to CarLife-Mall, it also supports radar cruise display, and a few other people have asked about the gear display for the manual. I better just talk about that quickly. They tell you how to set up so that you get an accurate manual gear display, so that should also work. And from what I can tell, it works it out the same way that MHD works that out. So it's basically RPM versus road speed. You should be in this gear, but it's something you've got to set up. But it should work for manual cars. I'm hoping to test this in a manual in the next week or two, an M3 manual. So we'll see how we go. What else? Okay, so the next question is in regards to setting your service or resetting service information. Now let me just get back to the home screen. Oh, hang on, we want outside temperature. Boom. Okay, so we go return. In fact, I'm going to switch over to the other camera. Okay, so if we go into the information menu at the top and then we go to maintenance information, this is where you can reset all your service info. Now you actually have to set this first up when you first install the cluster, but I went through and did it, and you can see there that I have done 800 Ks with the cluster, or 700 Ks. Wow. Yeah, that's way more. I have also sent in the email to CarLife-Mall to get things like front brake friction plate change to front brake pads, which they're going to get sorted out. But yeah, you can reset all your service information here. Just as a side note, this is actually stored inside the cluster. So when you get rid of the factory cluster, all of your current service data is gone. You need to transfer it over. And interestingly enough, Does the iDrive bring it up? I'm going to check that as well. There we go. Service required. Yeah, everything gets reset at the same time. 9,300, which is the same information that we have here. 9,300. Oh, yeah, same information that we have here. So the iDrive is picking up the data from the new cluster. Now, some people asked if polarized lenses affect the display, and I'm going to just double check. They do not. Doesn't matter which way you turn your head, the polarized lenses are not affected by this display, unlike the iDrive, which I can't see if I turn my head. So yes, whatever's in this screen is not affected by polarized sunglasses. Oil level check. So on base models that don't have the iDrive screen, you actually have to check the oil level through the standard display. I don't know if that works. This car's never had it. I cannot check the oil level through the display on this car. I can't even check it through the iDrive because something's broken. But if you need to check your oil that way, there may be an issue. I don't have a solution at this point in time, but I will keep an eye on it. And if I work out how to check the oil through this screen, I will let you know in the comments below. The next thing, can you use an original cluster after you've had this cluster in the car? So with this, and I actually had this one plugged into a CAS module on the bench when I was testing the other day, and what I noticed, if I plug the original screen back in, it just learns up on this car. So basically what will keep happening, because this isn't VIN locked, the VIN part of this display is not filled in. Now keep in mind that when you are swapping dash clusters about that are genuine clusters, it uses the VIN information in the cluster to display a tamper dot within the cluster if there's an issue with the VIN on the cluster not matching the car. This doesn't store VIN information, so you will never get any tamper dots. If you put your original cluster back into this car, it will just learn up the kilometers. So now the CAS in this vehicle has more kilometers on it than the cluster that I removed. If I put the original cluster back in, it will just learn up based on the CAS. This also just relearns, it basically just displays whatever data is in the CAS module. You can offset it because sometimes people like to do that. But yeah, basically the CAS kilometers are the accurate kilometers. The reason they're actually different, I'll talk about it. When you buy a brand new car from BMW, they can do up to 100 kilometers on the car and then reset the odometer, but the CAS doesn't reset. And they do that so that when you buy a brand new BMW, you feel all special and it's got lower Ks, even though mechanics all over the world have been raping it and you don't realize. Anyway, next question. Can you display Waze or CarPlay? No. And I've put a bit of thought into that over the last few years, especially when I was trying to develop one of these clusters myself. There is no simple way to properly get Waze or CarPlay on a cluster like this without it being integrated into this unit. If you want to have infotainment and that sort of stuff, it needs to be a fully linked system because there's no way to touch this screen or really control it with any accuracy. Like if you've got Waze, how are you going to put address info into it? It needs to be getting data from somewhere else. Yeah, long story short, you need a system that is set up to output something within this display, and this display isn't doing anything. So using it for CarPlay, Android Auto, that sort of stuff, it's not going to happen anytime soon. Now, the factory CCC units, they do output song information on the CAN bus. Now, CarLife-Mall was trying to display song information, so it would just display a title down the bottom. My E53 actually does that with the iBus controller thing that I've got in that car. That's probably going to be the best this is ever going to get, but they're having issues with it not matching up, and that will be down to different ways of displaying USB data, Bluetooth data, CD data, radio data, all that sort of stuff. It is on different addresses. So for now, don't expect any multimedia integration with the dash cluster. I pre-warn you. Will it do M57 oil and coolant temp? I can't speak specifically about M57, but it tries to do it on this car. We can go back. Well, actually, you guys have seen it. You've seen how I run this thing. So I can view water and oil temp, but because this doesn't have a correct oil temperature sensor, they both display the same data. But I mean, the potential is there to do it. I assume if you've got an oil temperature sensor in the car, it's going to display it. OBD emissions monitoring. Unfortunately, this is something I couldn't test. This cluster is not a factory cluster, and ISTA is going to recognize that this cluster is not factory, so I cannot confirm how it handles emissions testing. If anybody knows, please comment below if you can get your OBD emissions readiness to activate with this cluster. I can't answer that question. It's also something we just don't do here, so it's never a problem. Do you have to cut the AC duct to fit it? So these do have an AC duct that runs just behind the cluster. This has plenty of room. You don't have to modify anything. It just fits straight in. I know that the ID4 cluster must have a bigger back on it, and you need to modify some stuff in the dash. There's no modifications to fit this. And just something I want to say, the bezel fits remarkably well. However they've managed to get that dimension for that is very impressive. It fits really, really well in there. Okay, next question. Do you need to have iDrive? No, you don't need to have an iDrive unit. Yeah, this will work in a car that was not sold with iDrive originally, so that's fine. Does this cluster VIN lock? No. Apparently the ID4 clusters, they learn the VIN of the car they're first fitted to, and then they lock to that car. This one definitely doesn't. I've had it connected to multiple CAS units. It's no problem. Will it display 7th and 8th gear? Now, unfortunately, I can't check in this car because it's only got 6. However, these clusters, this company that makes them, they've been making them for F-Series for a long time. And obviously all the F-Series have 8 speeds. This software's come about from modifying versions that was originally on the F-Series clusters. I have no doubt it will display 7th and 8th gear without any problems. Does it have a programmable shift light? No. Now that is a feature that I have messaged CarLife-Mall about. Hopefully they can integrate that. It would be good. The other thing it doesn't do, which I kind of would like, although it probably doesn't matter, is being able to change the RPM total. So basically have it scalable for RPMs, because this thing is never revving past 5. Although to be honest, again, after driving with it, it's fine. Don't worry about that. Do better things. Make MHD work. We don't need to adjust the tacho range. Does it work with the DCT trans? Yes, it will definitely display DCT info. Non-M DCT display info. If you've got an E90 M3 or an E92 M3 with a DCT, you won't get the shift modes, but a standard non-M DCT, this will display everything perfectly. And a few people have asked, is there an analog face? There is not. I don't know what to say about that. I don't think, I guess if you want analog faces, just use the factory gauge. This is better. Trust me, you're gonna have to trust me. I know it's a personal preference thing, but this, it's clearer and it's easier to see information than if we had 2 big dials for speed and RPM. But it's the sort of thing that you can't really relate to until you've spent time with it. This is easier to see the information we want. One thing I would like to change is a couple of the font colors. So where we've got the yellow font over here, that's quite nice and easy to read. This blue, I can change the color of this blue text, but then it matches the background text of the RPM dial, which I really like that being blue. I have mentioned that to CarLife-Mall. It's not a big issue, but man, this layout is very easy to read with a quick glance. And like I keep saying, it really does look, it makes you feel like you're in a newer car. And I've shown it to everyone here. Everyone actually thinks it's pretty cool. With a few tweaks in the software side, this is going to be a really nice bit of kit. And I'm going to end the review off there. Guys, if you've got any questions about it that I haven't answered here, put a comment below. I will put them below. I will put a link to CarLife-Mall. They don't want me to do this, but it is currently $600 US. That pricing's not going to hang around forever, but if they do have to put the price up, send them a message, tell them you saw the 0 to 60 video, and they might do you a bit of a deal. They are really good to deal with. Their customer service is really nice. Yeah, and thank them for sending me this cluster. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to get another one for the other cars. Yeah, I don't want to go back to normal gauges. I like this, and I know it's gonna get better. All right, I'm ending it off there. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.